Hello, it's August 2023. Trust. That's one of the biggest issues we in this civilization are facing, is the lack of trust. A lot of people already know how, for example, governing bodies, various positions of authority, mainstream as well as alternative media, etc., has divided us. And a big part of the problem is creating a lack of trust. And that opens the door to, as a descriptive, negative emotions such as anger, hate, etc. And it also opens the door to disrespect. I've highlighted, using examples of various positions of authority, how there's a lack of respect for the common person. And by no means is this a dig at them, because there's also a lack of respect for them. Now, I'm not stating or implying any injustices or tyrannies that may or may not be being imposed. It's not a real thing, and I condone it at all. I'm just saying there's a mutual lack of respect because there's no trust. Now, how do you trust someone? Trusting someone is getting to know someone. And we've seen for decades now how even neighbors in a subdivision don't even know each other. And people move around, come and go and everything else, but no one even takes the effort. If you frequent, say, a coffee shop or a store or something, wherever you are, and the people working there get to know you. For example, they get to know your order. Now, it's a very nice feeling when you walk in and they say, "Oh, hello, you want your regular, your usual, whatever." And it's a nice warm feeling because they've gotten to know you more than just another face in the crowd. And the same can apply for various positions of authority, using the example of law enforcement, police. They don't know people that they're dealing with. They assume and trained for, and perhaps even part of the character, they have a lack of trust, and that lack of trust creates fear, etc. But people need to get to know each other. Now, I've talked about professionalism, how it's a disconnect from humanity. And it's really a very cold, as a descriptive approach to interacting with someone. And the bottom line to that is not getting to know that individual. And we see a big problem like this, for example, with the courts. And in fact, the courts go as far as to say that if there is, say, for example, a judge or a lawyer or somebody knows any of the parties, then it's a conflict of interest. Now just think about this for a minute, because there's a detachment. There's no connection. Nobody knows each other. With the idea being that, well, it's going to be fair. There's going to be a fair trial, a fair hearing, a fair interaction, and that is not true. Because how do you judge someone, for example, who they are as a character, whether it be a lawsuit or a criminal matter or some sort of tribunal, whatever? You don't know anyone, but you're trying to apply laws to be fair. Now, let's set aside agendas and how things can be overlooked, circumvented, etc. Nobody knows each other. Wouldn't it be better? I'm just going to segue for a moment before I continue. We see the same thing with juries. Juries making an opinion about someone They don't even know them. They're basing their opinions on a limited knowledge base of the person based on information which, more times than not, are false. But just imagine if we didn't live in a world of lack of connection. If we lived in a world where there's no professionalism. We lived as human beings should. Everyone knew each other, and they were better able to assess whatever it is. And this is not just with the courts or police or anything. This is even in people's personal interactions and interacting, for example, at a store or anything else. I've highlighted, for example, how busybodies stick their nose in other people's business. And they tend to do that more with people that they don't know. There's a disconnect, and that disconnect is a trust. And that really feeds busybodies. Busybodies are useless in society, but I digress. But when you know someone, you know their character, you're more willing to, with minor things, say, okay, whatever. You may correct them. I'm just going to stop here and segue for a moment, where we see a lot of the laws, for example, just the Highway Traffic Act. You can drive all year round, perfectly, safely, obeying all the laws, but then what happens? You make one little error and boom, they ding you for it. Don't make any errors, and then they use logical fallacies, for example, of appeal to extremism. Well, that could have been fatal, and all this other nonsense. It's just nonsense to justify. There was a time, a long time ago, setting aside the questionable history that we're told, where, say, for example, someone was driving home. I'm not saying that they were drunk or anything else, but whatever. For whatever reason, they get pulled over, and it's like, hey, Bob, hey, I have to stop you because just don't do it again. Life goes on. There was no documenting, creating some artificial narrative about them on a social justice platform or social media exclusive to a handful of people, which they can write things about anyone they want, like today. There's none of that. It was just like, yeah, okay. People were happier. The people, for example, in positions of authority, whatever that may be, were happier. When you went to a doctor, they knew you. It's like, hey, how are you? How's the family? Whatever. We don't see that anymore, especially over the past 3 years, how everything has changed. We don't see that connection. There's a disconnect. How can you trust someone that you don't know? And how do you get to know someone if you don't make the effort, and people don't create the opportunity or even have the desire to? From that, what we see is fear, anger, lack of tolerance. And I'm not talking about the social justice movement tolerance nonsense. I'm talking about just being around people. We have a disconnect because we have no trust. We don't have trust because people have become their own little micro islands, and everyone wants to be strong, be that lone wolf. And I've talked about all these things over the years in other videos. People think, oh, this person's the lone wolf, and it's all been romanticized in movies and everything else. There's no such thing for the human species to be the lone wolf. Now, there's a difference between that whole mythological nonsense of the lone wolf and everyone being their own little island and being independent and everything else, to someone who can hold their own. That's key. If you can't hold your own, then one way to look at it is it could be a liability. If you have nothing to offer, okay, yeah, you find something that you can offer, but you have to be able to hold your own in life, mentally and physically. This whole lone wolf, and we're all divided and everyone wants to be independent. We have these fictional situations, scenarios that are romanticized. Especially we see this in movies, how certain types of people and everything else, or groups or whatever you want to call them, are elevated to becoming something that they're not. And there's all this hype. We need to connect. How do you do that? Be kind to someone. Say hello, good morning. Maybe let someone step in front of you in a line or something. Start up a conversation. Get to know the people around you, not just your family and friends, but just people around you. And then we have, I forget what it's called, the 7 degrees of separation. And then you start to know people. Now, I made a video not too long ago about having a photograph taken, partying with certain types of people and all this other stuff, because it's about who you know. Now that's in one little tiny part of the world, but when you look at the people who are not the commoners and stuff, they know this. They get to know everyone in their circle, for example, the elite types and so forth. And they develop friendships to whatever degree. But they get to know each other. They get to trust each other. But the commoner, which is the majority, they don't do any of that. It's all divide and conquer. We've heard that before. So the bottom line here is we need to start trusting each other. And I'm just going to close off how we've seen for decades how, for example, the human species has been so vilified that, for example, if there was some sort of apocalyptic event and how everyone's going to be raped, pillaging, and plundering and all this other nonsense, and there's a real attack against males, but that's a whole separate topic. And just hyping up this fear. And even so-called scholars and philosophers, which are a waste of time, both of them, both disciplines, if you want to call it that, they really say, hey, you know, human nature is so inherently wicked and evil and destructive and attacking and self-centered, and it's all a lie. And how do you know it's all a lie? Because how many times throughout human history, regardless if what we're told about history, but whatever history that we do know or we think we know, how many times has the human species had to rebuild? And we see even today, during catastrophes, natural disasters and so forth, how people unite. They help each other. That is human nature, is to build, to create, to help each other, to band together, to do something. But whatever people think nowadays is wrong. So, to trust others is to get to know others. And that is important for the human species to survive. There are going to be some that don't think like that. Sociopaths, psychopaths, just batshit crazy people. But the majority are not like that. Anyway, things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
This Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.